So my name is Eric, as we mentioned, and I'm going to be joined by some other folks here to talk about progressive web amps. Exciting pattern that we're seeing more and more of, and I'm excited to tell you about. So here is a modern website that you see up here. It is fast, it's well-designed, it's interactive, and engaging, all the things that a modern website should be. And in fact, it's very engaging. Users spend 40% more time on this premium site than compared to the sort of free equivalent on the same domain. And it's also made with AMP and PWA, which means that users are spending 40% more time on the PWA and AMP combination than the sort of standard HTML combination. It's hard to describe exactly what percentage you're getting from the different content, or whether it's the implementation or the type of content on there. But this sort of PWA and AMP combination, this type of engagement boost is exactly what you'd expect from progressive web apps and AMP combined, this kind of boost. So let's see, going back a little. We introduced a lot of folks to the idea of combining PWA and AMP last year at AMP.Conf. And since then, the idea has matured quite a bit. There have been challenges for this combination. These are some of the bugs we've worked through, some of the ones we still have to work through. But it's been worth it for a handful of developers who have actually implemented these patterns in the wild. So let's review a little bit for folks who aren't actually all that familiar with what these things are. Hopefully you have an idea of what AMP is. But I can give you a little bit more background on what the combo is and what PWA is as well. So to summarize the basics of what AMP gets you, it's basically a turnkey format for fast-loading pages with some really great UI out of the box, or UX out of the box. That's kind of the core value of AMP. So it's PWA? Well, there are a few more moving parts to PWA, progressive web apps. If you imagine two axes that would define the experience on mobile devices, on one hand, you might have reach. How many surfaces can your content show up on? And on the other hand, you might have capabilities. What's the experience that the users get when they land there? Well, the mobile web has always done really well with reach. It can work across platforms on mobile, desktop, tablet. It can be embedded and easily shared. And also found via distribution platforms. But they haven't historically had the capabilities of native apps, which are very strong on the capability side, but often are sort of locked in these experiences that don't have as far reach. You have to go, you have to download these things. Well, PWA sits in a position where it combines the best of both worlds, the capabilities of native apps with the reach of the mobile web, where those capabilities boil down to a number of advanced platform features like add to home screen, push notifications, caching abilities that make it possible for repeat visits to load quickly, and then also better reliability and offline experiences, better reliability in limited connectivity situations, and the ability to have a completely offline experience. And ultimately, it's important to remember when explaining these two technologies that in the end, we're really just talking about web pages. There's some special things that come from it, but in the end, it's the web pages that you know and love, just with some extra kind of special sauce on it. And that these two technologies are just complementary ways of achieving different goals. They each have their own strengths and some weaknesses as well. But, as should be no surprise from the title of this talk, when they're combined, you get to enjoy the benefits of each, and they do combine well. And in the end, you get a feature-rich experience that starts fast and stays fast, kind of the best of both worlds. All right, so it hasn't always been in as great a state as it is today, this combination of bringing AMP together with PWA. And there are a few reasons for that. Historically, there have been kind of these three main issues. First, the ecosystem. We don't yet have an ecosystem of tools and templates and services, the kind of things that would help folks. The web, of course, has been around for a minute, but the combo AMP and PWA are relatively new to the web. The combo is very, very new. And so we don't have everything that you might need quite yet. However, in the same way that AMP Start, which you might have seen in slides earlier today, provides a good starting place for folks getting started with AMP, with tools and templates. We also envision having similar tools and templates for AMP and PWA, and that's something that we're starting to work on as well. Second, templates are well and good if you have complete control of your own site, the ability to just take these templates wholesale or implement things directly and just sort of throw them up on your site. But not everyone has the flexibility to do this. Folks are anchored in specific technologies that they're built on, CMSs and that kind of thing. So that's not the reality for a lot of folks, which is why we're also working with CMSs and other platforms to bring a lot of these capabilities directly to them. So if you saw the presentation earlier today, the WordPress presentation, that's great. If you haven't, I encourage you to go check out the video of that to learn a bit more of what we're doing there. But again, basically just want to make these technologies available to a lot more folks. So another key piece of the problems that we've experienced with AMP and PWA combination is that when you combine two technologies, you're bound to have to iron out some of the kinks of an integration. So a number of things didn't work quite right in Shadow DOM. Here's some closed bugs that we eventually kind of fixed. A lot of these didn't work at first, but sort of went through them. And there's still more to do. There are edge cases that you run into when you combine these things. And it's important that we're sort of upfront that there are challenges. But even if most folks are in a pretty good state right now, as it is. So finally, one thing that was really lacking in the ecosystem was guidance. If you've looked at our docs and been a little bit confused, as Paul mentioned he was, you're not alone. It's great to have options to choose from, but one piece of feedback we've gotten repeatedly is not what can we do, what are a bunch of options that we could potentially do to combine AMP and PWA, but what should we do? What do you recommend? Have been more familiar with these technologies. So we've done a little bit of thinking about what a well-lit path for AMP and PWA would look like, and I'm going to proceed through a little bit of high-level general guidance that we think offers the highest ROI per step as you go through some of the options for how to combine these technologies. And before I get into the detailed recommendation, I do want to add one thing. If you have AMP pages, if you're publishing AMP pages, and if you also have a PWA, it doesn't matter what it's built on. It could be an AMP-based PWA. It could be completely independent. One thing that you should be doing if you're using a service worker in your PWA is using AMP install service worker on your AMP page to warm up the service worker in the background. So when folks land on your PWA from your AMP page, they're getting this experience that's already warmed up. So yeah, basically do that, thank us later. It's pretty trivial to do. So yeah, highly recommended. Another kind of side note before I jump into the main recommendation is that you know your business. What I'm going to present is a sort of general recommendation for folks that we think will work in most situations. But there may be different pieces, different functionalities, different ways of doing things that as the person who knows the most about your business, you might identify and say like, I think we would do this a little bit out of order. I think, push notifications aren't super valuable for us, but like an offline experience is because most of our users are accessing content offline. And you should remember that as we sort of walk through this. But without further ado, the high-level recommendation is to build your site with AMP. And yeah, that's sort of big step one. And then step two is to progressively enhance with PWA. And this is a sort of sequence. Do one and then do two. And step one breaks down into a couple things. When you're building your site with AMP, the biggest benefit that you're going to get from AMP is on your sort of entry points. Entry points being where you get the biggest speed benefit, where distribution platforms can do clever things to get additional speed benefit. And these pages are essentially articles, product pages, learn more, these sort of entry points that people land on from search, social sharing, those types of distribution platforms. And so once you've done that, basically build the rest of your site with a framework of your choice. This could be an existing framework out there. It could even be with AMP. If your site is supported with the features that you really need in AMP, that's fantastic. And we obviously think that the speed benefit you get from that is really, really worth doing. But it could also be vanilla JS. There are a whole lot of options for how to do the rest of your site, like these more advanced checkout pages, that type of thing. So then, once you've built your site with AMP, progressively enhancing with PWA is the sort of next step. And this breaks down into a few different things. Again, this is a kind of general sequence. And again, you may want to do some out of order based on what your needs are, what your business's needs are. But here we go. So step one would be basic caching to load up, to speed up the load time for pages. And it could include, for instance, caching third-party resources and that type of thing with a service worker. And I brought up the service worker a couple times with no context. I don't want to get too deep into this because folks, we've presented about this before and I don't want to reiterate for folks too much. There's some documentation online, but basically it's a client-side proxy that can intercept calls from the client and serve, for instance, cache content instead of going all the way to a web server and doing that round trip. And it also, incidentally, is what supports push notifications, which is essentially the next step in the sequence for most folks. Though it's worth pausing on a key aspect of push notifications, that this is often not done like really tactfully in the wild. For instance, if I were meeting you and shaking your hand for the first time and I said like, by the way, can you help me move this weekend? That'd be like, you might want to know me better before like making such a commitment. Similarly, a lot of people's first time on a site, they get a sort of notification that's like, hey, do you want push notifications? Do you want us to like tell you anytime there's something new? And it's like, oh, I don't really know you yet. Like maybe I'll check out the website more and then make a decision. Better ways to do this include asking when users have more context for what push notifications might mean for a given site, and maybe even after they've indicated a specific user intent, or even checked a box while going through a checkout flow or something like that. But yeah, when respectfully done, this can be like a really valuable thing for publishers and users and merchants. So for some developers, you're actually done at this point. The rest of the features in this sort of box here are really to optimize for users who are returning to the site again and again, kind of frequently. Let's say daily users, due to the amount of effort that it takes to do the following things as well. So, but if you do want to take that steps, if your users are engaging on a more daily basis, you can add an app shell, which manages navigation and page transitions, implemented via service worker or cookies. And you can use what we call an AMP in PWA pattern, where AMP is the content and sort of a PWA shell, or potentially just a standalone PWA. The next step that we'd recommend is adding offline support, either full or selective offline functionality and access to content. And then, and only then, after doing these things, adding the app manifest to trigger the add to home screen prompt. So here's the manifest. Just a brief aside to sort of talk about this. The manifest, among other things, describes how your page should look when installed from a device's home screen. And when you have the service worker and the manifest, that makes your page eligible to get this nice add to home screen button and really have more of that app-like functionality that folks can tap on and open the app. The thing is, when folks can just tap on this thing in any situation, they might be offline. They might have limited connectivity, and it'd be nice if they weren't just greeted by a blank screen or something like that. And so that's why this sort of manifest step comes at the end of these things, that you'd really want your users to have a good experience when they open this, even if they're in contexts where they wouldn't really expect that they'd need web connectivity, potentially. So that's it. These sort of steps are our current idea, general recommendation for how to get the best out of combining AMP and PWA, a little more on-the-rails general guidance that I really hope is helpful to folks. But you may ask, how do we actually know that this works, that this is good, that even the combination of AMP and PWA itself is worthwhile and worth doing? Well, I'm excited to invite some folks who are creating AMP and PWA combinations in the wild. So please welcome Madison Miner from WompMobile.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Eric. My name is Madison. I'm with WompMobile. First, a little bit about our company's history. We started in 2010 with the goal of helping other businesses optimize their websites for mobile. And we've been through a few different iterations. At first, we were building M.dot sites, which had some problems being served from a different domain. Later, we switched to making JavaScript adaptive sites, which was a big step forward. In 2015, we dove in headfirst into AMP. When we first heard about AMP, a Google-led initiative to speed up the mobile web and solve mobile performance, we got really excited. Mobile speed and performance has always been one of our core goals, and an opportunity to guarantee it and validate it with a Google product was right up our alley. So we dove in headfirst into AMP, and it's been a success. Today, our platform serves 5 million e-commerce AMPs every day for some of the largest companies in the world. Our AMPs, thanks to AMP bind and AMP list and other AMP components, have feature parity with their canonical counterparts. They're fully featured AMPs that look and feel just like the canonical site. The only difference is they're faster, which everyone loves, our clients love, their customers love, and they see the benefits. We'd started experimenting with some of the technologies under the PWA umbrella, including service workers and manifest and push notifications, payment request, but we hadn't really discovered how to work the app shell into our platform until I saw Paul's presentation last year at I/O, where he showed off the new PWA plus AMP pattern, or PWAMP, Progressive Web Amps. And when we saw this, we got really excited. We actually started engineering later this day after the talk, building PWA and app shell and using this pattern in our platform. As Eric kind of showed, this is how it works. The PWA app shell is comprised of the header and menu user interface elements. The app shell can also have complex JavaScript that you might need that's not AMP compatible. Maybe you have some complex analytics or website monitoring or chat or payment request. That can be loaded in the app shell and only loaded once per user visit. And as Malta said earlier, AMPs are portable content units. They can be cached. They can be served via the service worker. They're lightweight. They're standalone units that we can load into the app shell as the user navigates the site, keeping a persistent header and menu and having nice, smooth transitions to make it feel very app-like. The user journey plays out a bit like this. They do a search for something that you'll show up for. The AMP, or the listing in the search results page, has the AMP lightning bolt badge. Before the user even clicks on the result, Google is preloading the AMP page in the background, which is a benefit you can only get with AMP pages. When the user taps on the AMP listing, it loads instantly. While the user's viewing the AMP page, we're using the install service worker component to install the PWA, the app shell, and the associated components in the background. So when they click on the next link in the user journey, the PWA loads instantly and shows the next AMP page that's associated with the click. The user can continue to navigate the site, and we load in AMP pages as they do. When they go to checkout, we can have the rich functionality of a payment request. After they're finished checking out, we can prompt them to add the app to the home screen. This video is showing how that plays out in real time. It's for our client Carved that I'll be showcasing throughout this presentation. They make these really cool wooden phone cases. Wooden phone case is their top search term. When you do a search, you'll see the AMP listing. It'll load instantly. The lightning bolt badge we've measured increases click-through rate about 25 to 30%. They're in the AMP page now. The PWA is being loaded in the background. Now they're in the PWA, loaded instantly. The header and menu is persistent as they navigate the site. Another AMP page loads in. Allow them to check out with just a few clicks. And then they're prompted to add the app to the home screen. That whole video is 20 seconds long, starts with search, goes through checkout. That's real time. That's how long it takes. However, it hasn't always been easy. During this process, we've encountered a few challenges and learned a few things. I'm going to share some of those with you today. First is, how do we display non-AMP pages in the app shell? How can we prefetch AMP pages? And how can we reduce duplicate code between our mobile website, our app shell, and our AMP pages? So first is loading non-AMP pages. This example here, you can see it's a complex app. I've uploaded or selected a map of Amsterdam. You can resize the map. You can position it. You can choose the type of wood you'd like it laser engraved into. It's a complex, JavaScript-rich, custom-made app that uses Canvas to allow the user to customize their phone case. Probably not the best application for AMP. Might be possible. You can do some pretty cool things in AMP, but it's pretty complex and uses Canvas. Most of our clients have a few pages like this that allow for rich customization, or have interactive charts, or have other components that are going to be difficult to convert to AMP. We wanted these pages to load into the app shell smoothly, feel like it's part of the experience. We didn't want it to be separate. So our challenge was, how do we load non-AMP pages into the app shell? Discovered 3 options using the shadow DOM, good old trusty iframe, and HTML imports. Shadow DOM was the obvious first choice. That's how AMP pages are loaded into the app shell. And this works. We have this working in production, but there's a few things to be aware of. The first is the window.onload event only fires once when you load the app shell. It does not fire again when you load child pages into your shadow DOM. So if you have scripts in your child page that are depending on the onload function to fire, to execute some code, you have to find another way to fire that code. Next is document.write. If any of the scripts that are in your child document use document.write, that's going to overwrite your app shell, which is obviously very bad. We worked around this by overwriting the document.write function, which is a fairly common hack that a fair amount of libraries do. It works pretty well. Next is any references to document.body or head in your child document are going to reference the head and body of your app shell, which is not the end of the world. The most common artifact of this is that scripts add other scripts to the document, and so your app shell ends up with extra scripts in it that are meant to execute against the child document. These scripts can do what they need to do. They can still find what they need to find. It works OK. What we've done to work around this is we've marked everything we want to keep in our app shell with a specific class. Then when we navigate away from a non-AMP page, we delete everything in the app shell that doesn't have our class to keep our app shell from being littered with scripts and other components that might have been added by the child document. So again, there's a few things to keep in mind, but this does work. We have this working live in production. Next is the iframe. Iframe is a handy tool that should be in every AMP developer's toolbox. This also works. We have this working in production. A couple things to keep in mind. The document that you're loading into your app shell might already have a header and a menu present. You don't want to display this twice, since it's part of your app shell. It can be difficult to hide this with CSS. And typically, when you load a document into an iframe, you just set the source attribute, and then the document streams in. So you don't really have an opportunity to remove the duplicate header. What we've done to solve this problem, we simply mask the iframe. We wait for the document to finish streaming in. We remove the header and the menu, and then we show the iframe. We lose a few milliseconds on our first paint with this, but these are non-AMP pages that aren't the fastest pages anyway. We only do this for complex, heavy pages. So in actuality, the difference in page load time is trivial. You can solve that by removing the header and menu, and then loading it inline using the source.attribute. The challenge with that is that any scripts that run inside the child document, inside the iframe, will see its origin as about.blank, which can be very problematic for analytics and other scripts that make use of the origin. Another challenge with this that we have yet to overcome is if there's a script that sets the document location to another origin, it will load inside the iframe. For example, if there's a script that's loaded inside of your iframe that directs to google.com, Google will load inside of your iframe in your app shell, which is obviously undesirable. If it's a click that instigates the navigation, you can intercept that. Or if it's a JavaScript navigation to the same origin, you can intercept that. But if it is a redirect to another origin, we have not yet found a way to make sure that page loads full screen, not in the iframe. So that's something we're still working on. The third is HTML imports. It's a less known element. It is designed to load one document into another document. So at first, this seemed perfect. However, it does have some of the same challenges as the shadow root. Namely, window on load doesn't fire, and head and body will reference the parent document. Also, it doesn't work in iOS. So this was sort of a deal breaker on that one. Out of the 3 potential solutions, this is the only one we're not using in production. So what are some of the challenges? What are some of the fun things you can do? We found a way to make our app shell see the future and download the AMP page that you're likely to click on before you click on it. What we're doing here, and I'll show in a second, is when we scroll a link into the viewport, we are adding a prefetch link tag to the app shell, which will tell the browser to download the AMP page before the user clicks on it. The cool thing about using a prefetch link tag is the browser will look at how much resources are available. Is there enough battery? Is there enough network? Is it a good time to prefetch an asset? If it is, the browser will download it. If not, it won't. The other reason we thought this was kind of cool is normally when we've used prefetch tags, we put them at the top of the document, and we prefetch whatever we want to do. We weren't sure if adding them at runtime due to a user action would have the desired effect. Turns out it works great, so we thought that was pretty cool and worth sharing. So I'll hit play. We'll scroll some links into the viewport. In the bottom right, we can see console that prefetch links are being added to the document. And in the upper right, we'll see the AMP pages are being downloaded. An additional benefit of this technique is that if you're using a service worker and then you lose internet access, the user can continue to click on any links that they'd scrolled past and they'll still load, even without internet access, and they haven't viewed the page before. The code to make this happen is pretty simple. we're using an intersection observer to monitor all the links on the page. As soon as the link is more than 50% into the viewport, we'll check to see if we have an AMP version of this page. We do not prefetch non-AMP pages because they are not as friendly portable content units. And then we add the prefetch link tag. So now we have a progressive web AMP that can load non-AMP documents into the app shell when required, and it can see the future and prefetch AMP pages. How do we make it easy to update? Challenge we ran into is that with AMP pages, you can use AMP components for rich functionality, like showing a menu and showing accordions. With the PWA app shell, you can't use AMP components. You have to use JavaScript. We tried to use the AMP runtime and the AMP shadow runtime, which is used to load AMP documents into the shadow DOM, both in the same document. Those two libraries collided, and we had a bunch of trouble with that. So we can't use AMP components in the app shell, and we can't use JavaScript in the AMP pages. So it's a bit of a problem, because when we need to make changes, we have to update it 2 places, which is cumbersome, which might be what's required. If you have rich one case we ran into is if you have a search bar that does autocomplete or something like that, it can be pretty tough to do that without JavaScript. But if you can get away from that, what we've done is start building our app shells header and menu with no JavaScript at all. We're using the checkbox hack, which you guys might be familiar with. The idea is that you have a label that's associated with the checkbox. You click the label, state of the checkbox changes, and then you have some CSS that will hide or show some components on the page based on the state of the checkbox. So it works really well to hide or show a menu or for accordions. And if you can reduce the functionality of your header and menu enough to where that's all that's required, you can get away from having 2 separate versions. So you can have one version of your header and menu that's used both in your AMP pages when they're shown in Google Search, and also in your PWA that loads your AMP pages. So that's header and menu. A nice thing about this technique is we also no longer have to maintain the mobile website. There might be a couple pages on the mobile website we need to maintain if they're not AMP compatible, but this is an easy way to move to canonical AMP. This allows you to check to see if there's an AMP version available and load it, which reduces the maintenance on your standard website since it's now just AMP. Previously, before we started building progressive web AMPs, we would have the standard mobile website and then the AMPs that we're showing in Google Search. If we had a design change, we need to make it 2 places. Now that we're using the AMP pages everywhere, it's reduced our maintenance. So the last couple years, we've had the same recurring question come from our clients, or complaint come from our clients, and that is they see the majority of their traffic's on mobile. Mobile is the biggest growth opportunity, but the majority of their sales are coming from desktop. And there's a conversion rate delta between the 2 platforms. And it's been our goal to close that delta. And for the first time ever, with progressive web AMPs, we're seeing conversion rates that finally rival the desktop. And it's no surprise. It's a great solution. It has everything you'd want. It has all the benefits of a native app, has all the with the discoverability and all the benefits of a mobile website. Payments are easy. You can add it to the home screen. It can open full screen. It can run offline. It's super fast, awesome transitions. It really has everything you could want in a mobile experience. When we launched this progressive web AMP for our client Carved, which I encourage you guys to check out, carved.com. It's probably the fastest e-commerce mobile website you've ever seen. We did a 2-month A/B test where we directed half of the mobile traffic to the new progressive web AMP, and the other half the mobile traffic to their really nice, already responsive Magento mobile site. And the results were pretty impressive. We saw improvements across the board in engagement, pages per visit, time per visit, and the most important metric, conversion rate went up 75%, which is bringing it close to where the desktop conversion rate is. So it's been a fun ride. Thank you guys very much. Now I'll hand it over to JVM.
Yeah, thank you, Paul and Malte, for having us here at the AMP conference in Amsterdam. So we are from Jung von Matt. We are the second largest independent agency in Germany, and we are proud to be over 25 years old, but even prouder of all the projects we did already. So check out our short show reel. Yes, and that's me. I'm Thomas. I'm one of the managing director at Jung von Matt in Hamburg, and I like single-speed bikes and road bikes and also the open web. But today I want to talk about how we have built the new BMW.com. So what a nice challenge. That was my thought after the client called us. So here at the AMP conference, we want to show how we have built the new BMW.com. The job was to relaunch the BMW.com website completely from the bottom as a new digital home for the brand. So there's a long project history, but finally we made some bold decisions, focusing on a new platform with 3 goals: make it content-driven, high performance, and highly innovative. So our first goal was conceptual. So we wanted to create a website that is user and content focused. Content that pulls you in from search, social, and the open web. So the right content for every user. So bold teasers guide the user deep into the website and content. And spoiler, we invented the first AMP story module without the AMP story component. So, but the #1 goal was really to make the website really, really fast. And I'm really proud of this goal because after 20 years of fighting for it in every project, it was the first time that it was the #1 goal. So, following BMW's latest claim, sheer driving pleasure, we would like to say speed matters more for sheer surfing pleasure. So nothing is more annoying than a slow web and mobile experience. And speed also matters in the sales funnel. So you definitely won't raise awareness with a slow website. The next main issue was innovation. But innovation does not always mean to do big things. For us, the goal was to bring the app user experience to the mobile web. So everything with a thumb, and the next article only a swipe away. So as we started to think about the project, we thought we need 3 code bases, because the mobile and the responsive behavior was so different, and we definitely want AMP for the fast search access. So we did some deep dives into frameworks, check out other fast sites like The Guardian, and did deep dives into the AMP component world and found a great set of components, but with strict rules regarding third-party JavaScript and the 50K CSS limit. So at this stage of the project, we did not think about using AMP as our on-site framework. And in that time period, I saw Malte talking about a mix of AMP and progressive web app in Hamburg. And we figured out to meet Paul in Berlin. And he's talking about pushing these boundaries easily. Oh, the P is already missing. But It's meaning it's AMP and PWA. So we talked with Paul about this combination and how we built a canonical AMP site in connection with the progressive web app is what Per will show you next.
Hi, everyone. Oh, is the mic on? Yeah. OK, perfect. I'm Per, senior developer on the team that built the all-new BMW content marketing platform. And I'm really into electric mobility, as you can see here. So our first goal was to create a fast entry point. So we decided to use AMP as our canonical URL. Every first-time visitor, regardless if he's a search visitor or has had a link shared to him, will always see the AMP version. And we use AMP's install service worker, the AMP install service worker element, to bootstrap our PWA shell as the user is initially visiting our site. After that, we can deliver with the next click or a reload, or for a returning visitor, our tailor-made experience for desktop and mobile, where we provide a custom scroll or swipe navigation and dynamic loading behavior. So this is what you see when you load our PWA shell. It's a reduced set of markup that use very similar techniques to what WompMobile did to provide a JavaScript-free entry for our header. We also deliver our JavaScript to bootstrap the application loader, which means that the AMP shell you're seeing is not actually valid AMP. Whereas our stage here, the bold media component that's supposed to draw the user into the article, actually is a valid AMP document. It's a partial from our canonical AMP document, which uses the AMP shadow doc API in combination with the article body to form our valid AMP document, which is delivered to the first-time visitor. What we are trying to do is we only want to load the parts of the page that are actually needed to save bandwidth and resources for the user. As he continues through the content and the next stage becomes visible, we're using the AMP shadow doc API set visibility state visible to trigger content initialization for our next stage, so that we can draw the user seamlessly into more articles and remove the friction during transitions from content to content and improve our content discovery. So you might ask, is that everything our PWA shell is good for? And spoiler alert, yes, it is. So let me show you why we took this approach. You might remember the sales funnel that Thomas already showed you. And in the beginning, we thought AMP was only good for the entry, for the content discovery via search and social media. But as it turned out, we thought we had to fire up our PWA shell to provide all the engaging features like social sharing, parallax scrolling, sliders, all the enjoyable stuff. But as it turned out, perfect. We were able to push the limits of AMP in the AMP shadow doc API and include more and more features. And at the same time, we pushed the AMP team by providing a lot of bug reports so that they could make everything work. So for us, during the process of development, the AMP framework really evolved. We were able to integrate almost all the features we initially thought had to be developed into the PWA shell into our core AMP document, which is loaded as a split-up stage and article body. So this means we could use one single code base. We don't have to develop the two different versions that we actually did for the pitch. We were able to develop one article, save a lot of resources because we don't have that much duplicate code to maintain, and we don't have to implement the basic AMP features like the loading behavior. We were able to just add the custom code we needed for our loading and scrolling behavior and slide content discovery with the PWA. So the speed of the AMP project moving forward was really one of the benefits of the project. But of course, there are a lot more. Actually, the AMP components basically gave us the rocket fuel we needed to concentrate on user experience instead of rebuilding all the core loading mechanics for multiple versions of the site. Another benefit was that we were able to combine multiple pre-existing AMP components like AMP image, AMP video, AMP animation, and AMP position observer to create our bold immersive stage, which then, with the help of our PWA shell, became our custom-built AMP story module. So now we were able to enable swiping through the content for mobile users and push them further. So another benefit you get, of course, with AMP, and that's often the main decision for people to actually apply AMP to their project, is of course the benefit in the search results, where you get the shiny AMP icon, which really sets you apart from other search results. But we also saw other improvements with our search results, where AMP forced us to create a very strict content module for the article without any bloat of different articles that would bleed into our indexed content, since we're using AMP as our canonical pages. But with every project you're doing, or with every framework you're using, there are also pitfalls. And one of the pitfalls we encountered were the limitations. You all know that you can't use any custom JavaScript in AMP. And you know that if you want to develop a rich, responsive website, working in the limitations of a 50 kilobyte CSS boundary can be challenging. But for me personally, as a developer, it rather felt like a tool to argue with designers that it's not just important to improve the look and feel of the site, but build a beautiful page and at the same time remain fast. The second pitfall is that you really have to check your limitations. So we use AMP as a framework, and with every framework you apply, you have to use the right tool for the right job. So if your goal is to build a single-page application, then AMP might not be the right choice for you. But for us, with our content segment and for a content marketing platform, it definitely was the right choice. The last part is that you're working on a living project. AMP, during our time when we used AMP, it evolved quite a bit. We ran into issues, and since the components are updated and you have a single version that you embed into your site, code can change. And that can render your AMP page invalid at times. But as long as you check the release notes and maybe include a validation check into your tool chain, then you can prevent your page from becoming invalid. And at the same time, you still profit from all the advancements the AMP team actually does to the components. So your page is getting better and better and faster without you doing any changes to it. So to wrap everything up, I'll hand back to Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Yeah. So we are almost finished, but to bring the project on point, we have a small case video for you to have everything in it.
How do you excite people for a car brand who are not interested in cars at all? By listening to their needs and telling them stories they actually want to hear. Data-driven, entertaining, and helpful. For this purpose, we've developed a central stage, a new home for the BMW brand, the all-new BMW.com. For a web experience just as dynamic as our cars, we used Google's high-speed AMP framework and dramatically increased performance. And thanks to another web technology called PWA, ultra-smooth full-screen videos enrich the experience, and the next great story is only a swipe away. The result? A 30% higher click-through rate from Google Search, and up to 3 times faster website loading compared to competitors, and a high-performance experience that you would only expect from a native app. And of course, the configurator or a local test drive are always just one click away. The all-new BMW.com, the world's fastest automotive content marketing website.
Yeah, so today I want to thank our client BMW, so especially Christian, who was the best agile product owner ever, and Jörg, who made the project possible. And for sure, so much love for all the passion from the best team at JVM. So these people are happy to invite you to have a look to the new BMW.com. Thank you very much.